Magic players are generally frustrated with blue players because it feels like that color just stops you from playing the game. Counter spells can stop you from resolving anything, and nowadays even the uncounterable spells still have answers. But when it comes to multiplayer unsanctioned Magic the Gathering, aka Commander, players can manipulate the rules to their advantage, specifically conceding at instant speed. The act of conceding at any time has its advantages, but can ultimately lead to a lot of saltiness at the table. Certain effects need to resolve before a player leaves the game in order to gain an advantage out of it, or maybe someone is just conceding at an unoptimal spot where someone else could maybe win if they were still around. I wanted to go over one such situation from a Reddit post talking about how they came across a quote-unquote dumb and abusive rule that two players in a pod had, and walk through the logistics of it, the pros and cons, and ultimately where I think a lot of players need to take a switch in mentality of when something like this actually should be used in your favor and when it's honestly just ruining the play experience. Today I've come across a very dumb and abusive MTG Rules Two Guys Ruled. So I like to play at a local Magic shop. I was playing Commander and I had some creatures with lifelink. It was intense rounds where we were all about to die, so I needed some life. I killed off one player, but he decided as soon as I declared my attackers at him to finish him off, he left, aka he probably just conceded. Ruling one of my lifelink and triggers I would get with combat would activate, and essentially they wouldn't gain any life whatsoever. They wouldn't get any benefit because the attack didn't go through. I'm so annoyed at this, and his friend agreed that what he did was legal. And honestly, before we get any farther, it is. In Commander, you are, and in Magic in general, allowed to concede at any time. It cost me the game for him just saying, nope, I leave and won't let you finish me off. Any triggers I had to draw cards with, combat damage, gain life, etc. are gone. I need that life to survive one more round to finish everyone off. Shouldn't I be able to just declare my attackers at someone else and then just, kind of have the stuff done before he quits? For would not the game then says he doesn't exist anymore and I can just switch attacks? I swear this was the dumbest way I've ever lost. What can I do to avoid this in the future? Is it an actual legal thing someone can do where they can quit as soon as they're about to kill them? I need to get over it, or do I need to get over it, or just say, nah, don't play with unsportsmanlike behavior against Magic? So the first post points it out like pretty easily, so let's walk through the legality of this. Yes, players can quit at any time using the rules to the disadvantage. A player is very unsportsmanlike, and obviously this really only matters in a multiplayer Commander setting. There's no unsportsmanlike behavior necessarily in a constructed environment. Heck, if you concede early, it saves me time in rounds and I can go use the washroom or something, right? Really where this comes from is if we look at the comprehensive rules on 104.3a, a player can concede at any time during the game. A player who concedes leaves the game immediately. That player loses the game. My favorite rule out of this section. Hey, I just want to point this out. As that mill guy, I got a favorite rule under 104.3c. If a player is required to draw more cards than are left in the library, they draw the remaining cards and then lose the game the next time they would receive priority. Hey, shout out to Mill in the rules, eh? Just gotta throw that in there. Anyway, player can concede at any time. cEDH and EDH and constructed Magic and whatever other format you want to think about all work under these rules. And the reason I specifically brought cEDH is they actually have a slight amendment to it. Now, this isn't any comprehensive rules. cEDH is cEDH is EDH. It's a subsection of players that work with an understanding of Rule 0 that helps them to achieve a goal of everyone working to just win the game. There's no anyone doing stuff because it's crazy. So there are some soft tournament rules that a lot of players work with in kind of quote unquote official cEDH rule sections, where here during a multiplayer game, players are encouraged to concede while they have priority. So again, conceding at sorcery speed, but again, this says encouraged. These aren't really necessarily enforceable rules, and the stack is empty on their turn. A player who needs to concede at any other time will be dropped from the event. So for example, maybe you have an emergency come up, maybe you have to really run to the washroom at that point. I imagine maybe you could probably talk to a judge and pause the game at that point. But regardless, if you need to leave the game, maybe someone salts off, they're gone, but they'll be dropped from the event and must talk to a tournament organizer, in which case maybe the table can, in order to re-enter. In this case, a judge will facilitate any mandatory actions of the conceded player until the stack is empty. So in this example, if this was happening in a cEDH environment and you needed to get an attack through to draw a card or have a certain ability go through and maybe deal damage to the rest of the table or whatever, then a judge would be there to act as that player, not taking any further actions, but resolving the rules and interaction and the stack and having state-based actions resolve as those abilities land, and then that player like kind of concedes from there, or like that player is gone once those abilities have resolved. In this event, this happens in response to combat. The turn will be, in combat, the turn will be facilitated until the end of combat. So the whole thing is just kind of gone from now at that point. But yeah, so I specifically wanted to mention that because cEDH thankfully has that kind of rule enforcement there. And I really like this because this is a good template for EDH to use. Again, constructed 1v1 Magic is very different. There's no love lost here. If you're conceding early and you're salted off, whatever, you lost the game, or maybe your opponent just had the absolute nuts. You pooped out your whole affinity hand and they had the meltdown. Look, hey, can't do much about that. All right. But when it comes to a multiplayer EDH environment, I like this template that cEDH has. Now, going back to this situation, I guess the poster here did not know that that was a rule. And genuinely, I do believe that this is unsportsmanlike behavior. I think there are situations where something like this can and should be used in your advantage, and in other situations not. For the sake of cEDH, I think, in a competitive environment, follow through with that sportsmanlike behavior. If you lose, you lose. But of course, maybe you have a situation where like, hey, I potentially have a chance to win the game. I really need to go to the washroom, but I'm going to stick it out like, oh, you're going to win the game. Okay, look, drop it. I got to run. Like, there's situations like that. You kind of talk it through with your group, no love lost. But obviously in a game of EDH, I think where this can be used in your advantage is in a place where you already have a group understanding, you're with friends, and this is something maybe you do semi-regularly, right? Like in a place where all players have the understanding that this is okay, are okay with it, have the conversation, and maybe this is a group that have strong wills. They're not necessarily going to be hurt by this. I could see this being perfectly fine. Hey, if you're there for an EDH night with some buddies, you're a couple games in and you're like, hey, I'm conceding at instant speed. I got one more game left. Screw you. Let's end this pod. Okay, whatever. No love lost. Like, you're a good group of buddies. Like, it's not a problem. Maybe you're there with some drinks, some food. Like, you're going to watch a game after. Like, all that stuff coming together, use it, whatever. That's a casual environment. That's a place where you've had a rule zero conversation and you've managed the environment to the point where no one is really going to, hopefully no one's really going to get upset there. So use that to your advantage there. But when it comes to a place at an LGS, I'm assuming here, they're saying I like to play at a local Magic shop. In an LGS environment where you may not know everyone, you might be coming across new people every time you go to this shop. This is not great. This is not like, this is the unsportsmanlike behavior that, gets into the whole, I don't want to bring this up because this might be like a little too high level, but the whole like prisoner's dilemma thing, right? Y'all can look up prisoner's dilemma. Essentially the idea and the takeaway from it, or one of the takeaways, is that it's better in a situation with two people to help each other. It's better for two people to help each other in that given environment. But if one person is not helping you, it's better you don't help them. You don't get any benefit if the other person isn't helping you. So it's better for all players to not be conceding at instant speed. Everyone gains a mutual benefit from it. But in the idea of the prisoner's dilemma, once some person stops helping everybody, they actually get a higher advantage than they would just by helping everybody. So in that case, it's better if everyone doesn't help everybody. In the prisoner's dilemma, it's better if you snitch, as you get in a higher individual reward. But if either of you don't snitch, then no one gets off. It's just if you snitch, maybe you get like a cash reward or something. So in this case, it's just better in this case for the group, which is what you're here for. This is Magic the Gathering. You are here for the group, not for yourself in an EDH game. Do what the group needs you to do. Okay? Follow through. Don't concede at instant speed, or at least let the abilities resolve and then go ahead. Right. And then I think like there's the idea that if you take it a step farther, that there is conceding at a kind of inopportune times as well. Maybe not at instant speed, but you let the attack triggers go through, they draw whatever, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to concede here. You got your ability. I'm not going to play it out. I don't feel like this is helping me. And I think in situations like that, that's also fine too. I don't think people should be getting mad there because you let the abilities resolve. And I think there's perfectly normal situations where like, hey, I came into this pod, but a buddy of mine just walked in. I'm going to try and start a pod with them. I'm going to let you go through with your abilities, you get your things, you whatever, and then you move on. I think that's perfectly fine too. People are allowed to go about and enjoy the game the way they want to, assuming that they follow the rules of the environment, of the engagement that they're currently in. Play through the group. If you don't feel like you want to do that, then okay, let that person have their abilities. Don't completely screw them out of the game. Maybe just have it go in a direction, let those abilities resolve and be like, okay, this is a good point for me to go. I have a friend walk in and just, again, this is part of that communication thing. Every time I do an EDH video, I feel like I'm always preaching the idea of communication. It's not just about rule zero. Open your mouth and have that conversation. I feel like, you know, we're at this point in the world where too many people use the whole, I'm protecting my peace, I don't owe anybody nothing type of speech to like be bad actors. And honestly, I believe that as well. I think people have taken Western therapy speech way too far. We are social creatures at the end of the day. I'm not saying you need to like let the abuser be that person, you know, don't stand up for yourself, but I think we also need to work towards the collective group here. It's not just about the individual. I think large pressures in Western society really push you to, you know, be that part of the prisoner's dilemma where it's all about the individuality. And no, it should be about the group. Okay, again, my opinion is that we are taking all of this a little way too far and we should be focusing in on the gathering here. And that's really where my kind of thesis of that statement here is. So underneath this, someone also says just additional information in cEDH tournaments. We have rules for this, conceding at sorcery speed. So kind of what I was talking about. And I think that's a pretty good template and a way to kind of go about things. It's already something that's already there. So that's great. This is the right answer in all aspects. And okay, okay, no, go back. Oh Lord, I'm clicking into stuff, folks. I'm clicking into stuff. Go back one more time. I'm doing a whole lot of stuff. As you can tell, folks, I'm struggling with my keyboard shortcuts right now. My play group has a house rule that you can only scoop at sorcery speed. And that's good. That's a rule zero discussion that's already happened. Let's keep going down to some of the bigger ones. So I would insist that all triggers resolve. If not, then I would also scoop. So this is also very frustrating for that player as well. And I think I would feel the same way as well. Like, hey, if I need, you know, I need you to draw a card because once you draw your second card this turn, I draw a card. Like if I need some ability like that to resolve, then I'd be like, okay, you know what? Screw this. I've worked through all of this. I need you to go about this game. And then people are like, oh, if you need your opponent to go about a combo, it's not a combo. That's bogus. That's garbage. There are plenty of combos in Magic the Gathering that require your opponent to exist, require your opponent's creatures to be there, require your opponent to cast spells. The game is reliant on what your opponent does. You are literally trying to defeat an opponent. That doesn't make any sense as an argument. My combo is allowed to rely on other people. Okay, it needs people there to go. I was once in a game where I knew I only had 1 round left to live unless I did something crazy. I top decked Nicol Bolas Planeswalker and I used all of my 8 mana to cast him. Then I used a -2 ability to steal my opponent's creature like a big lifelinker. Problem was the guy I stole it from was also not in a great spot, so he just decided to scoop and leaves the game, like essentially nullifying everything. Basically cast an 8 mana to summon 3 Loyalty Bolas to do nothing. I lost right after. People are real emotional babies sometimes, and hey, I agree with this situation. This is just like, this is screwing someone over to the max. This is the max. And I feel like at this situation, I would definitely be like as at the receiving end of this, in the sense that I'm one of the other 2 players in the pod, the other 1 to 2 whatever players in the pod. I would be like, all right, you get a token of this, because screw that person for conceding, right? Again, unless you're in a play group where you already have a group of friends going, you already understand the rules of engagement, this is something that you do regularly, y'all are okay with it, that's something completely different. This, I'm assuming, is in a vacuum, it's a random environment. I'd probably just be like, all right, you know what, take your creature, because you know you're allowed to do your thing. You cast your spells in Magic and you're allowed to do your thing. Many people use this as a reason to allow scoops at sorcery speed coming from tournament Magic. 104.3 cEDH has their own thing, blah blah blah. What this player did was absolutely legal. It was a dick move, as you said, completely unsportsmanlike behavior. Rules manipulation like this is cowardly and okay. All right. If I was the 4th in pot, I'd say don't care whatever the actual outcome. I consider use claim. What is the winner? Oh, okay, like that person. As I scoop, then anytime I see you in LGS, I would always reference the game and how you just won, just to piss off. Okay, all right, hold on. You know, we don't also want to be like, okay, it's also part of this to be like, you know, part of the whole doing things for the collective group idea is that, you know, someone has done something wrong, but also not only should we call them out for it, but also work towards reparative behavior. I think a lot of people get in this whole idea of like revenge seeking where they're like, yo, we need to call these people out, never give them a chance ever again, like blah, blah, blah. Really depends on the severity of the situation. What they did, of course, this is a card game where they conceded an instant speed. It's unsportsmanlike behavior. You tell them like, hey, you did this that one time. You know, it's not cool if you do it again, but, you know, let's just play the game. You know, give them a chance, play with them again. Maybe they're having a bad day that time. If they do it a second time, hey, now I'm the butthole here. Now I'm clowning you, right? So it's about that repeat behavior. Was it a one-time thing? Like, okay, let it pass. Like it was a weird time. Maybe we can laugh about it in the future, but work towards reparative behavior and help people kind of move forward. This is like when people have like extreme views of like crazy stuff, like, yo, like I've heard people unironically be like, yo, we need to get rid of, you know, like homeless people and stuff instead of like trying to solve the problem of like what homelessness is. All right. Like that's obviously extreme, but this kind of trickles down to, okay, they did something wrong. It was unsportsmanlike, but like, are we really just gonna like penalize them every single time for something small they did the one time? Again, it really depends on what the situation is. This doesn't, you know, this isn't a black and white rule that applies to everything, but this is Magic the Gathering. This is a card game. This is a luxury hobby. We are all engaging in something like this and coming towards an engagement of a fun hobby together. We can all work to be a little nicer to each other. I think we can. They played rules according to the official rules that said the player scooping is a jerk. If I was one of your other opponents, I would say to house rules, so your attack assume go through, unblock, whatever, lets the triggers go through. I'm happy with this too, right? Again, the cEDH template of what's going on definitely feels like the way to go about it. So this was something I wanted to touch on today. I don't want to go on too long here. I already had my little blab about like life rules. I try to made a whole little sub rant about like kind of the prisoner's dilemma, but let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Is this the type of situation where, like, how would you resolve it? Like, I think a lot of players would be like, okay, yeah, that's unsportsmanlike behavior, but let me know in the comment section down below, how would you resolve a situation like this? How would you let the triggers go through? Would you just restart the game? Like how would you feel about this on the receiving end? Have you done this before and there's like a legitimate reason for it that I didn't, you know, kind of say? Let me know in the comment section down below. Sound off down there. But at the end of the day, just like many of my EDH videos, going over these like little Reddit posts on our EDH, communication is king. Be the change that you want to see in your group, and be welcoming to people that generally want to welcome other people. Give people a second opportunity if you feel like they deserve that, and kind of work towards that group. All right, y'all, don't take it. Not everything is gaslighting. That's all I'm saying. All right, have a great New Year's. If for all my EDH folks that may not watch my constructed content past this, hey, hope y'all holidays have been great to you.